What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here, and as the new NFL season is upon us, I wanted to take an opportunity to discuss the research process for the NFL and how I think is the best way to discover players, teams, and opportunities to target. If you follow along on this channel, I think you guys realize the research process that I put together is usually very sound. It's usually very logical, very reasonable, and effective. Now, whether I can put the lineups together, that's a completely different story, but I think we'd all agree that the research process that I offer is usually pretty good. So, with that being said, a reminder, I announced this about 6 months ago. DFS On Demand, my site, no longer offering NFL tools on a weekly basis. I'm focusing to just golf, but as you can imagine, I've got this giant NFL database and other sports that I've been cultivating for years and needed something to do with it. So I partnered with Gup over at Gup's Corner, who has been, cornering the market on great content for years, to, for the first time ever, create NFL tools for them. So the tools that you see in the process that you see me go through, this is what I have built for Gup. It's Gup's brainchild using my database, and I built out the tools, and I think something really, really cool came out of it. If you would like to subscribe to Gup's Corner for these NFL tools, highly encourage you to do so. You can use the promo code RickRunGood. I believe it's a percentage off. And I will also give away an annual membership to Gup's Corner. So here's how you get into that draw. Make sure that you like the channel, subscribe, that's the easy one, and leave a comment below just telling me which fantasy player you're most excited to roster this season. That will put you in a draw. I'll pull somebody and announce it for an annual membership over at Gup's Corner so you can use the tools that we are going to go through. All right, now's the time. Let's dig into the research process and how to identify the best plays for fantasy football. All right, let's jump into this because I'm ready to go. So here we go. The first place that I like to look at, the first thing that I like to look at is going to be basically pace of play or opportunity, right? I want to roster a bunch of guys that are going to be in games that a lot of plays are being run. I think that's very logical, but I think people overlook it. Fantasy football and fantasy sports in general is all about opportunity. The more chances to score points, the likely more teams are going to score points. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. So this NFL team scouting report tool that we've generated is my first place to start every single week. And I like it because it has the stats that we're looking for. I mean, you can get this information anywhere, right? You can get paste information anywhere, but it's presented in a way that I think is really valuable. So what we've got here is for each team, and you can click through these teams and everything will update. You're able to see over the course of, obviously this is the 2018 season, this will be updated for the 2019 season once we get the data. What you're able to see is each team and how many plays they ran each week. And if you hover over these, you can see their opponent and their score. And then it also has in the gray line how many plays on average their opponent has run or how many plays they ran that week. So what I like to use this for is identifying teams that play fast, teams that play slow, teams that have bad offenses obviously run less plays. So if you look at someone like the Arizona Cardinals, who only ran on average 56 plays per game last year, and a lot of them, I mean, what is this? All but 3 or 4 games were under 60 plays. Some of them really bad here. Week 12, they ran 45 plays against the Chargers. That is just I don't even know what to call it, a dead zone of fantasy value when they're only running that few plays. The offense obviously stinks anyway. And then you flip over to a team like the St. Louis Rams, who ran 66 plays per game last year, 10 plays on average better than the Arizona Cardinals is obviously huge, and you can see it, a very consistent, just over 60 all the time, right? Sometimes 72 plays. The Rams offense had a really high ceiling in terms of their pace and in terms of how many plays they could run here. So almost every other week they were up in the mid 70s. That visual to me is something that is really necessary to start the process. And then you can just go down further and do the same things for offensive yards per play. So obviously we're breaking it down on a per play basis to try to level the playing field a little bit, and see that the Rams have average 6.5 yards per play. If we go back to those Cardinals, absolutely miserable 4.3 yards per play. And then time of possession. This was one of Gup's favorites. How often how long are teams controlling the ball? Again, it all goes back to that opportunity of, hey, is someone going to be able to get a bunch of fantasy points on this team? So this is the place that I like to start, keeping an eye on all of these teams to see what their trends are as the year goes along. On the right-hand side, I've got snap shares in here. So some of them can be a little wonky until the 2019 season starts. Obviously, like the Eagles are a really good example of this. Right now, this is all accurate in terms of player information, but because some players have switched teams, obviously it's a little bit different. So, Josh McCown playing 80% of his snaps, that was obviously not for the Eagles last year. So this will update once week 1 comes across. But the point of it being, you want to know how often someone is on the field. If they're on the field, they have an opportunity to score points. So here is the running back breakdown for the New England Patriots, which is such a mess every single week. James White leads the way, playing 54% of the snaps, but that is not a lot. They don't have a bell cow running back. They've got a running back by committee every single week. But if you go and kind of flip through a couple other teams, I'm trying to think who might be a good example of this. Maybe we can go back to the Rams. Yeah, Todd Gurley, towards the end of the year, it got worse, but was on the field for 86% of his team's snaps last year. That's a huge number. So the fact that he's on the field, he has a chance to catch a check down pass, has the opportunity to run the ball, all really, really important stuff. We do the same thing for pass catchers, so I throw wide receivers and tight ends in here as well. Really the Rams, they run a lot of these, 3 tight end sets, 3 wide receiver sets. They've, a lot of 4 wide receiver sets. You can see they've got 4 wideouts that played at least half the snaps last year. If you go to some other teams, you're going to see, well, Antonio Brown, obviously it was with the Patriots last year, but, here you go. Only 2 guys on the current Kansas City Chiefs roster or 2 wide receivers that I should say, that played over 50% of the snaps. So this is the things that you're looking for. I like to start here because it gives me a good baseline for each and every team to understand how they're actually committing to their offense and which guys are going to be on the field. After that, after I have a good baseline for what is actually going on for these teams, I want to actually see, okay, what are the matchups for this week, right? How does this come into play, this information that I just learned? And this matchup advantage tool is one that I think is a really good way to just get a nice level glimpse at where the best matchups are. So what I'm showing here are all the week 1 matchups. So you've got obviously day, time, home team, and away team, and then they're ranking based on pass offense, rush offense, pass defense, and rush defense. So obviously no surprise that actually it is a little bit of a surprise because this is in total yards. We're actually looking to change this up. This will probably be in terms of yards per play by the time you see this, but whatever the designation is, right now it's total yards, so or yards per game. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers technically had the best pass offense last year in terms of passing yards. So you'll see the Buccaneers are on here, the Steelers are on here, and the Chiefs are on here. So each team is broken down by their pass offense, their rush offense, their pass defense, and their rush defense, all by the total ranking. So then what we do is basically we just say, okay, well, if the Chiefs have the 3rd best pass offense, which they do right here, and they're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have the 2nd best pass defense, That's what would be a -1. The difference between Kansas City at 3 and Jacksonville at 2 is 1 spot. It's a negative for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a positive for the Jacksonville Jaguars. A bigger example of this. So we'll go to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is playing as the number 2 best passing offense against the 22nd ranked New England Patriots pass defense. That is a 20 spot difference. So they would actually show up and be a 20 on the targets range, which they do. So if you scroll down, very easy to identify. Here are the pass offense targets. The biggest differences, the Steelers are 20 spots ahead of their opponent, the Patriots. The Rams are 13 spots ahead of the Carolina Panthers. The Texans are 12 spots ahead of the New Orleans Saints, et cetera, right? All the way down to the Detroit Lions, who are 16 spots worse in pass offense than the Cardinals are at pass defense. And then you can click through these, right? So I can say, okay, I might want to target, Ben Roethlisberger and Juju Smith-Schuster for the pass offense. Oh, Ravens rush offense, that's a huge difference. One of the biggest differences you can get against the Miami Dolphins. Maybe I want to look at Mark Ingram there, right? So it gives you an opportunity to quickly identify the best matchups. And we do that home and away as well. So you can kind of click through here and see which are some of the best matchups, like the Seattle Seahawks, a 28-point difference between their rush offense and the Cincinnati Bengals rush defense is obviously a massive number. Someone like Chris Carson might be on my short list of guys that I would want to look at for this week. All right, so now to this point, I've got an understanding of the types of teams that I want to roster and how those teams utilize their players. And I've looked at the overall matchups for the week of week 1, what I'm trying to actually figure out. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we can start to get into some more, and I think they're more important metrics or more leverageable positions. So I'm going to show you one really, really quickly here. And this is a tool that we've kind of just dubbed as, it's called In the Trenches, which is basically a look at each matchups, offensive line versus defensive line. So what you're able to do is choose, I want any defense here. I want, Atlanta's defense against, Seattle's offense. And it shows you the 5 starters that we would expect to start for this week. Now, again, this is using last year's data. So when 2019 starts and we get the real data in, this is all going to change. But the goal of this is to show which offensive line or which defensive line is at an advantage or a disadvantage. So we take every lineman and we give them a value based on, it's a proprietary value based on their run blocking, their pass blocking, success in those types of metrics. And so they have this value that we're going to add up. And basically what we're saying is, does the sum value of the 5 guys who we expect to start on the offensive line rank better than the 5 guys that we would expect to start on the defensive line, for example, okay? So that's where this edge and this advantage comes into play. So these numbers are going to change a little bit. I'm going to try to simplify this, but if a defensive line's rush defense is 100, and their offensive rush offense, their run block ranks as an 80, again, that's a 20-point difference. So you would say Atlanta's defense, in terms of rushing, has an edge over Seattle's offensive line. So we would maybe not want to play Seattle rushers against the Atlanta defense. And we do the same thing for pass blocking, right? This is, how often are they getting to the quarterback? Some teams obviously apply a lot more pressure than others. This is a way to quickly identify good passing matchups, good rushing matchups by line. And what I like about this is I've also included the injuries here. So if there is someone who's going to be out, I can actually go through and choose, hey, here are the 5 guys that I think are actually going to play this week, and get a new score allocated for my matchup. So this is going to change a little bit, but I do want to introduce it because I do think, and Gut believes this too, the offensive and defensive lines are so critical in an NFL matchup, and I couldn't agree more. And then finally, this one you may have seen something similar to this. I mean, red zone information is so important around the industry. This is your highest leverageable position. The teams that get into the red zone more often score more often. The players that are targeted or used in the red zone are going to score you more fantasy points. This is just the highest leverage of situations. So we want to make sure we broke that down. So what I'm showing you by default is the NFL as a whole, as a league, who the leading passers are in the red zone, the leading rushers and leading receivers. And they're sorted currently by passing attempts, rush attempts, and targets, but I include some other information in there like receptions, touchdowns, rushes, completions, all that stuff, right? So the league as a whole passes the ball 52% of the time and rushes the ball 48% of the time when they're in the red zone. That's what this diagram on the bottom right is. But on the left, I break it down by team. So it's a big difference between Pittsburgh, who in the red zone throws it 65% of the time, and in the red zone, the Buffalo Bills run it 61% of the time, right? Like, huge difference between those two teams. So if you are getting into the red zone a lot, and you're rushing it 61% of the time, if you're Buffalo, like, I want to target some Buffalo running backs potentially. Someone who might be able to snake a couple of touchdowns from the 1 yard line for me. So what you can do is click on any one of these bar charts for these teams, and it's going to actually change the visual to show you just that team. So if you look at this and be like, oh my God, okay, the Pittsburgh Steelers throw the ball 65% of the time in the red zone, and of that, Juju Smith-Schuster is leading the team in targets. He's a guy that I think is incredibly valuable. I like to use this for even like these ancillary players, like tight ends. Like Vance McDonald, if you're looking for a punt tight end on a week, might be the type of guy who gets, now that Antonio Brown is gone, Vance McDonald was already third on the Steelers in red zone targets. Maybe he gets a boost. Maybe he's a guy who can catch, 2 short touchdowns and pay for himself, or even at his price, probably 1 touchdown does the trick, right? He goes 4 for 40, but includes a touchdown. Like, that's probably a pretty good day for Vance McDonald. So you can just click through these teams and see what their actual breakdown is. And it really helps you identify the types of players that you think might be valuable for that week. All right, that's probably it. And that's just some of the tools. I mean, you can see here, Gup and I, we've got more NFL tools coming. We have more NFL tools out. We have college football stuff. So it is a really exciting time. If you are, and this information, some of it is proprietary, some of it is available elsewhere. So I mean, in terms of the process, right? Like, go find red zone information somewhere. I think this is a good way to get it, but hey, you should go get red zone information. You should go get offensive and defensive lineman information. You should go get matchup info. Like, go get it. I just think it's available and easy to use here. So if you do want to sign up for Gup's Corner and his football tools, use the code RickRunGood. And also, if you like the video, make sure you're subscribed and leave me a comment below in terms of which fantasy player you're most excited to play this year. I'll draw a winner for a free annual subscription to Gup's site so you can use these tools. That's about it. Good luck this year. Tweet me. It is at RickRunGood. Leave a comment below. I'll talk to you guys later.